Hello and welcome to the last unit of this course. My name is Felix Peter and I'm Chief Product Owner for Customer Experience in the area of Cloud SME Solutions and Content. Within this session, I will first give you a recap what happened in the last sessions and then we'll give you an outlook about the further direction of central business configuration. Within the past sessions, my colleagues did give you an introduction about the project experience. So how can you set up the project? How do you manage project tasks? Scoping experience, how do you review what SAP offers for you, how do you select the basis of your system, the configuration experience where we show you how you fine-tune your system, how you do set up the org structure, and also provide further settings. All of that is based on a new architectural model. And this architecture model will provide us a lot of leverage for further improvements going forward. Now I will give you an outline about these improvements, showing you what we have planned in the area of project experience, scoping experience, and configuration experience. Looking at the project experience, we are planning multiple additional features in the area of project handling. First of all, an important thing for the project managers is to get a better overview about the progress of his tasks and also about the risks in his project. So what we intend to do is to introduce a project dashboard where he gets exactly that overview. Customer-defined project templates will in the future also help our customers to add their own activities and manage the project in a way they want to have, obviously certainly focusing on the mandatory activities that we still need to do. One important aspect of our current implementation that we have with the first release is the initial implementation of an S/4HANA Cloud solution. Obviously, a lot of our customers are not only doing one project, but will do subsequent changes over the course of their project lifecycle. So what we plan to do is to have customer-driven change projects as well. So that's one of the first features that we'll implement with the next releases. And with that, we will guide customers also for further implementations, such as a scope extension or implementation of a new localization or larger changes of the customizing settings. One important aspect is for our customers also to not only have one change project. You may have customers that want to run multiple changes in parallel, for example, introducing a new legal entity into the system while providing fixes for an already live entity. So multiple parallel change projects is one of the important aspects that we'll have in our solution. User and authorization is also one of the areas where we'll need to do further investments. At the moment, we don't have a detailed authorization concept in place. So going forward, in order to be able to manage more complex projects, our intent is to provide a team setup where you can group users into certain teams and then assign them to activities later on, but also have authorizations for specific activities in place so that a finance user can, for example, only do configuration in finance and cannot trigger any transports to a productive system. Updates and upgrades are a very important thing for a modern cloud solution because we can frequently provide new content which you can consume on an ongoing basis. So an important thing for our solution is also to support the upgrades and upgrades as they come. One thing that we want to improve here is that we will outline to our customers what is actually happening in the system, what has been released with that new upgrade. So what additional benefits do we provide, but also which legal changes have been applied so that your system stays in a more recent state. Adaptation management is a quite important task to achieve that. So especially for the legal changes, imagine you're getting new tax codes in, you're getting new accounts in for legal changes, for example, for your assets. All of that will need to be made aware for you because you may need to run some adaptation of the accounts and may need to do a mapping of the accounts to your customer-specific IDs. So that's what we would consider as an adaptation management, which is also one of the main benefits here. Cloud solutions also live on the possibility to quickly implement new features. So what we want to offer here as well is to provide customers the capabilities for beta testing support so that you can early on have adaptation of a new feature and then give us feedback and basically shape that feature to your needs before we roll that out to a larger scale of customers. So that's it about the updates and upgrades. An important aspect is obviously as well the system handling. So one thing that we have received as an urgent need from our customers is that our starter system can be set up in a more flexible way. So they obviously use this system for the fit to standard analysis, and they want to have that tailored as much as possible to their actual quality and productive system later on. So what we will do is also for a starter system, offer more capabilities in the area of scoping, selection of scope, selection of countries, and so on and so forth, which will give customers more flexibility in this area. One important aspect, especially if we go down the road of the multiple parallel change projects, is also the distribution of configuration. It is for our customers with the current queue system quite difficult to really do testing of new features, to really select what needs to be transported in a system. And that's an area where we want to improve also going forward, so that you will have multiple tenants, multiple projects in place, and can differentiate what of the configuration will go into the productive system in what time frame. So much about the project experience. Now let's have a look at the scoping experience. Our current scoping experience really focuses on everything what is part of the project. In the future, the plan is that we also accompany our customers already before the contract closure. So what we will provide is a so-called shopping experience, and I'll have some further slides on that, so I don't want to go into the details now. One important thing for providing such a good scoping experience is also the way how we structure our content. And also for that, you can already see here whether we want to rework scenarios, that we want to have more granularity, and also want to have an influence of the industries here. And I'll have a slide on that going after this slide, which will show you how and what we want to do in this area. Granularity of scoping is an important aspect for our customers, obviously. At the moment, we don't offer a scoping granularity beyond the level of the country. So you can define which processes are running in a certain country, but that's obviously not sufficient. We have customers which do have very complex org structures and also have different types of org entities. So you have a customer which has in the same company code a distribution plant and, for example, a manufacturing plant. And those two plants need to run on different processes. That's exactly what we want to provide with the org-dependent scoping approach. Another requirement, especially from our larger scale customers, is that they have multiple SAP S/4HANA cloud instances, for example. So they're not only running one cloud instance, but they're running two instances. And then they want to decide as part of the scoping for a legal entity in which of these instances this will run and which processes will run under which instance. And that's something which we'll also provide as part of the deployment target dependent scoping. As we've told you so far, our solution focus at the moment is clearly on S/4HANA public cloud. So that's a very important thing because this is the core of all of our cloud solutions. But going forward, we also intend to increase the scope and the solution coverage that we have. So SuccessFactors is among the first other cloud solutions that we want to integrate as well into the central business configuration environment. There are other solutions like the single tenant or our small and medium enterprise solutions that we also want to serve out of central business configuration. So what is the benefit of having all of these cloud solutions in one configuration environment? Well, you can do a customizing setting or configuration setting only once in a central place, and we make sure with our tooling that this is distributed to all of the underlying solutions in a consistent way. We also do have some process improvements. We talked about the change project handling before. So obviously a lot of the change projects are relying on scope changes, and don't want to go into too much details here. But another important aspect is the template-based scoping. So we talked about the org-dependent scoping before, where customers may have a distribution plant and may have a manufacturing plant. Now imagine he does not only have one distribution plant, but 20, 30 around the globe. And he wants to use the same scope for them in all of these places. What we will do with the template-based scoping is you can really nail down the scope for one of the plants, save that as a template, and whenever you create another plant, you'll simply use that template as a starting point, which you can further tailor down the road. So as I promised, now let's have a look into the content structure as well as what we want to offer in regards to shopping experience. So in regards to this content structure, we will be looking at 3 different dimensions. The first dimension is the industry, where we'll package the content in a way which should serve the purpose of customers in different industries. And we'll not only have an industry offering, but we will also look at more detailed business types within one industry. So for example, in the area of discrete, we will have offerings for customers that are selling standard products and offers for customers that will rather focus on production of make-to-order products. Obviously, we will also offer capabilities to combine multiple of these industry solutions, but the industry is one of the important, or the industry and the type of business is one of the important criteria which will help us to pre-select the second dimension that we have. And the second dimension that we are focusing is a process view. And here we have multiple levels of granularity for processes. So we have a very high level end-to-end process view like market to cash, which starts with the first customer touch points and goes down the way until you're invoicing something to a customer. And we are breaking that down into multiple sub-processes or sub-scenarios. So for example, market to cash has an opportunity to quote process. There is an order to fulfill process underneath. And also here we'll further break that down. So we'll go down to the actual level of activities. And for this example, one of the important activities also in the discrete industry would be a picking. And customers can then really see what our process offering is and especially what the process offering inside an industry is. The third dimension that we are looking at is the feature and function dimension. So in here, we have a 4-level hierarchy where we'll really break down different functional areas of a company and want to provide a comprehensive overview about the features that we offer in all of these areas. So if you go back to the example of picking, well, obviously, in order to run a picking, you need to have a pick list in place. You need to have basic customizing settings and all that stuff. And on the overarching process for the sale from stock, it is quite important that you have basic sales functionalities in place. So also here, we again have a pre-selection from our business scenario point of view down to the feature and function view. So with that content structure, what we will be able to do is really helping customers from the selection of the industry down to a level of features and functions so that they get a comprehensive overview about our offerings. So how does that map into our scoping experience? How do we want to support our customers going forward in the discovery of the scope before the actual contract closure? What we'll have a look at here are 2 different areas. First area is a public area, where basically every customer can anonymously navigate through our scope, review our offerings. In here, we make use of the content that I've just shown to you. The customer can familiarize themselves with the industry offerings. They can select the scenarios and the processes that they want. And at this point in time, we'll also give him a preview about the features and functions that we offer for his process selection. Once he's done with that, we want to go into more customer-specific environment. And in here, quite important for us is that we offer collaboration features. So the public part, usually we expect that it is done by 1 or 2 persons jointly together, and that's only the high-level starting point for the further scoping. Beyond that, we expect that in order to really give a good proposal to our customers, you need to have input from various areas of your business and from various areas of your company. So what we want to have here is a collaboration feature to invite other colleagues with whom you jointly can discuss and further elaborate on the selected scope. Also important here is that we have a prioritization of the features and functions. So you may have some of the features and functions that are available in multiple of our solutions. So if you go down the area of procurement, we have procurement in our SME solutions, we have procurement in the S/4HANA cloud solutions, and we have procurement in Ariba. So it is quite important for us to understand how important a certain function or feature is for the customer in order to be able to give him a good product proposal, because that's the ultimate goal. At the end of this phase, we want to give the customer a product proposal that is serving his business needs. So that's what I wanted to tell you about the shopping and the scoping experience before the contract closure. Now let's have a final look at the configuration experience. Also here, We talked about the organizational structure, and we also talked about central deployment of settings. So especially in a context where you have, for example, an S4 solution with a SuccessFactors solution. If you're creating a company code or a legal entity, what we want to ensure with central business configuration is that you consistently create that in our environment, and this is then deployed consistently into both of the solutions. So it's no longer required that you create a legal entity on both of the ends and need to ensure that an integration later on. Another improvement that we plan in the area of org is obviously more flexibility and more guidance. So we want to have a guided org setup, which is really helping the customer based on the selected scope, telling him what org entities he needs and what the benefit is of adding these org entities. So, for example, we want to help him to create the proper sales org structure. Why do you need to have one sales org versus 10 sales orgs? Why do you need to have different divisions, distribution channels, and so on and so forth? That's all of the guidance that we want to bring in the org setup, so that we really also enable users which are not so familiar with SAP's enterprise org structure to set up an org structure which will really serve their business needs. Org entity mask creation is also quite an important aspect in some of our areas. Let's talk about retail industries, which really are creating retail stores in a very short time frame, or large number of retail stores in a very short time frame. So that's also something that we want to consider. Last but not least, in the area of org, we are also looking at mergers, acquisitions, and spin-offs, and that's obviously something which can happen to each and every company, especially for larger companies. And the features that we want to introduce here is a time-dependent org structure, which will allow to delimit the usage of an org, but also deletion functionalities where you can really parse out org entities out of our system. So now looking at the activity list. The current activity list that we have in the system is a very hierarchical one. So we are really grouping the customizing activities or configuration activities based on the functional areas. Going forward, we also want to have a second layer here. So we want to be able to have a scenario-driven configuration, where you really can then, for specific use cases, let's say we're talking about introduction of an intercompany process, which is across multiple areas. You have a stake in the sales area, in the logistics area, as well as in the finance, and maybe even in the controlling area. At the moment, all of that is grouped in different hierarchies. Going forward, we want to offer customers basically a blueprint saying, you can now go to this activity, do this setting, you first do the org setup, and you're telling your business which entity wants to be delivered from which other entity. Then you would go in the sales settings and define the pricing. You would have the finance capabilities to set up the invoicing between the two parties. So all of that is what we would consider as a scenario-driven grouping of activities, which will allow customers really to easier go through the configuration of our system. At the moment, we are also, as you've heard before, focusing a lot on the actual configuration activities. Obviously, if you're aware with the SAP Activate roadmap, that's not everything what you want to do in a project. So what we also want to do is to provide more flexibility and also visibility on other project activities, such as data migration. So obviously with central business configuration, we know which data is required to run your business processes. And therefore, we can also give customers going forward more guidance in what they need to do in regards to data migration, for example. Assignment of users and teams is something we briefly talked about before already for the project experience. So yes, we want to be able to not only assign users to a task, but also entire teams, which will help the project manager to better review progress and also react on shortcomings inside his project in case there are resource constraints. Last but not least, let's talk a bit about the configuration activities. One important aspect is obviously not everything will go right if you do the first configuration of your system. So you may want to have a deletion of configuration. And obviously, we need to rely here on checks to validate whether a deletion is valid or not. But it is an urgent need of our customers to have these capabilities in place. Template-based configuration is basically extending what I've told to you before in regards to these templates for scoping. We not only want to have a scoping template for a distribution plant, but you may also have specific configuration settings which you would want to attach to the same template. So that's basically the continuation of what I've told you before. It's not only scoping, but also a fine-tuning can be grouped in such a template. And then an important thing is obviously, if we have multiple solutions in place, we also want to have a cross-solution validation and deployment of settings. So not only for the org entities, what I've mentioned before, but also for other settings like country lists or whatever. If you add or change something in a description, then you want to have that consistently deployed in all of the underlying systems and not only in one of the systems. So that's something that we want to achieve with the configuration activities and the cross-solution validation here. So with that, I come to the end of the SAP course, and I want to thank all of my colleagues for preparing the course, and I hope we could give you a comprehensive overview about what Central Business Configuration offers now and will offer for you in the future. And yeah, you can now do the course assignment, and I wish you good luck with that. Thank you.